Hey guys, welcome to this week's version of Teddy's Teaching Tuesday, and today we're going to be going over how to use chains in your main lifts and why you should use them in your programming. So let's get to it. So the first reason I like using chains in my programming is that for longevity purposes. So let's take the bench press for example. So when I take the bar out of the rack in the lockout position, that is where my joints are most stable. That also tends to be the position where the chains have the most load. So as I bring the bar down to my chest, you can see the chains unload and actually put less weight on the bar when the bar touches my chest, where I am the most susceptible to injury. And again, that's when the joint is the least stable. Now as I'm pressing up and the joint becomes more stable, more weight is loaded onto the bar. Same thing with the squat. I'm more stable at the top of the movement, but as I get down into the hole at the bottom of the squat, I'm least stable and the least amount of weight is loaded onto the bar. So the second reason I like using chains is that it adds a stability component to the lift. So when you're using bands or even free weight, it's fairly consistent throughout the entire way and you can just go straight up and down. Now with chains though, because of the way they unload and load off the ground, it's a little bit different every time and they will move back and forth. So that way, you have to engage your stabilizers a lot more throughout the entire lift. And then my third reason for using chains is that you have to push through the movement with a greater rate of force development. So what that means is, in order to overcome that greater load towards the top of the lift, you have to push even harder and dig through. So this can be a great component if you're trying to overload or really try to press through some plateaus within your training because you're stuck at a certain point. So now that I went over the three reasons why we would use chains through our training, I'm going to show you how to do it or how to set them up on your lifts. Alright, so the first way I'm going to show you how to set up chains is for the squat and bench press. So the reason I kind of put those two together is that you actually set them up almost identical. It's just a matter of how long the leader chain is. So whenever you set the leader chain, this is the small adjustment chain where I can put it up or down to control how much chain is on the ground. I'm going to set it to a point and play around with it so there's a couple links touching the ground. The reason I do that is when I go to pick up the weight for a squat or a bench press, I don't want it swinging in the wind to create too much instability where it actually knocks me off balance. You want just enough touching the ground so that way it's still in balance and you're getting essentially all the weight at the top of the movement. So the two ways I've done this is that, so the first one is just the leader chain and then your weight chain. So once you figure out where you're going to have the leader chain, the weight chain is just going to go in the middle of the leader chain. Okay, so that way as it loads and unloads off the ground, it's doing so in an even fashion. Now some companies have started selling these weight chains with a 2-inch carabiner, so that way you can just clip it onto the leader chain. Now I will say from my personal experience lifting, it is kind of nice to have those carabiners because if you have enough chain and you're doing enough reps, it can just fall off. So when you have the carabiners on there, you can quickly pull them on and off, and once they're on the leader chain, you know they're not going to fall off as you're doing the movement. Now, another thing to consider when you're doing this is if you have people within a lifting group that are different heights. In my opinion, you should always set up for the tallest person in the group because the last thing you want to do is have that chain just hanging in the wind. So if you're always adjusting for the if you're always adjusting for the tallest person in the group, they're always going to be touching the ground. Now it may stink for that shortest person in the group, but again, they're going to be safe and they just may not have as much chain at the top of the lift, and they can always add more straight weight to the lift. So let's go ahead and just check out how we would set this up for the deadlift. Alright, so the last main lift I would use the chains for is the deadlift. So this one's really easy to set up, is that you just take the chain and drape it over the bar. Now, depending if you're deadlifting sumo or conventional, is going to determine where the chain is being placed on the bar. So if you're a sumo deadlifter, I would place the chains in the middle of the bar. So that way you have plenty of room to move around, and also they're going to unload and load directly in between your feet. Now, if you're a conventional deadlifter, it's going to be hard to do that because you're not going to have enough room underneath your feet. So that's where you spread them towards the sides of the bar. Now you have to be very careful in this position because as the chains load and unload off the floor, they will start spreading around and can get caught underneath the plate. So make sure you have ample enough room as the chains load and unload that they don't get caught under the plate and the bar loads unevenly on the floor, causing you to jack up your back. Now, when I put the chains on the bar, no matter what type of deadlift I'm doing, I'll either use wrist wraps or knee wraps in order to keep the chains in place and keep them from falling off as we're doing the lift. So along with the main movements, chains can also be a fun way to add weight to different movements such as push-ups, lunges, bodyweight squats, or in this example, I'm doing a hollow hold with gymnastics rings, but the chains are just making my body weight a little bit heavier, and also it adds a form of stability. So if I move one way too much in one direction, the chains will move as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this version of Teddy's Teaching Tuesday, and I'll see you guys around.